Hello, everyone. Welcome again. My name is Alvaro Guzman. I am part of the NutriNews International editorial staff, and we're here today for another episode of our NutriNews on air series. Today, we are delighted to have Gwendolyn Jones, an animal scientist and a seasoned content strategist and freelance journalist with over 15 years of experience. And today, she'll be talking and discussing one of her recent articles in our previous December issue titled Upgrade Layer Life Cycles to New Lengths with Nutrition for Adaptability. So, Gwendolyn, thank you very much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
That's great. So, before we jump into our discussion, would you mind giving and sharing a bit about your background?
Yes, yeah. I can actually share three pivotal moments in my career, but they all lead to why we're actually sitting here together today, talking about adaptive capacity and resilience in farm animals. And that's going to take me back quite a while, quite a bit. But it's when I was just finishing up milking some cows on a dairy farm in North Queensland in Australia. And I was 19 years old. And the farmers I was staying with came to look for me because they said they received a phone call from my parents. So I rushed into the house and picked up the phone. And my parents said, "We need to talk about the decisions for your future." And I can remember, wow, I just love it here. Thinking, I just love it here, milking the cows. I just want to stay here with these kind farmers. And my parents carried on to say, "You have been accepted at the Veterinary University in Hanover to study veterinary medicine. And you have also been accepted to study agriculture at the University of Edinburgh." And they insisted that I should come back to Europe and get some further education first, and I needed to make a decision. So my choice came a little bit as a surprise to my parents. And you have to know that I studied really hard back at school in Germany to get really good grades to be accepted at veterinary school. But at that moment, when I was standing in my wellies on the dairy farm, my heart was pounding, and it was full of gratitude for all this kindness that I received from the farmers and the farms I stayed on in Australia. So I told my parents I choose to study agriculture science. And my goal is to help farmers and make a difference to their lives. And I think it was because wherever I stayed on farms, I encountered the best type of people, and their passion in what they did. That's really something that sort of lit a little fire in me as well. So I went to Scotland and I studied agricultural science, and I specialized in animal nutrition with a PhD. And that really takes me to the second point in my career, which was quite significant, because I had this really amazing PhD supervisor. And one day she came up to me and said, "Gwen, I think you should write an article about your findings and get it published in a trade press magazine." And with her help, I got my first trade press magazine, first trade press article published. And that is really how I discovered my love for writing technical articles, which is what I'm pursuing throughout my career and right to this day, and which is why we're sitting here discussing one of the articles where I'm summarizing some scientific findings. And the third moment in my career that was quite significant that I want to share with you today is when I came across a concept. And that really excited me, but it also helped me through quite a difficult time in my life. And that's about 17 years ago now, and change happened to me out of nowhere, and it wasn't really in my control, and I was facing adversity. And I was searching for some kind of solutions on how to get out of my misery. And so I was reading articles, doing lots of research, and then I came across this article mentioning how organizations adapt to unforeseen change. And this article mentioned agility. So, in other words, the capacity to adapt to unforeseen change successfully. And what that did for me personally was take away my focus from what had happened to me to focusing on, how can I respond to this, and how can I develop my own capacity to respond to this better, and also bounce forward. And again, this had a really lasting impact on me. As from then on, I did not only apply this to my personal life, but also to agriculture. And agriculture is probably one of the most unpredictable fields to work in, as you know. And anything that can increase the capacity to respond quicker and more effectively to adversity is going to help farmers to stay more profitable. Yeah. And of course, I'm an animal nutritionist. And I started to look into, well, how can we support the adaptive capacity of animals by nutritional means? And as you can see, that's great. This all leads up to the topic we are here to discuss today. In my article, Nutritional Strategies for Improved Adaptability in Laying Hens.
That's awesome. Thank you very much for opening and letting us learn about those 3 very key moments in your life. And I think that builds up very well to what we will be discussing today. So thank you for that. We really appreciate it. So yeah, and jumping a little bit ahead into what we will discuss today, in terms of what we're talking about, adaptability and how we can improve animals' adaptive capacity. Can you define what an improved adaptive capacity is, for example, in laying hens?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the adaptive capacity of a bird, is really about the mechanisms the bird has in place to respond to challenges or stressors it encounters, and then minimizing the impact. So those stressors can include mycotoxins, it can include environmental increases in the environmental temperature, or also just, the stress from really producing a lot of eggs all the time, and that's another stressor. So also changes in the diet. And the adaptive mechanisms can then really include anything from morphological changes, physiological changes, behavioral changes, but also cellular responses.
Okay. And what difference does an improved adaptive capacity in laying hens make to the performance and productive lifespan of laying hens?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the adaptive capacity plays a major role in the resilience of the bird. In other words, how quickly it can return to its normal state in response to a challenge. And an improved adaptive capacity will result in more efficient responses. So this leads to more consistent performance over time, and also the ability to sustain high performance over a longer period of time. It is now well known that the gap between the potential performance of a layer and the actual performance that you might be seeing under commercial conditions is often down to how well the bird can adapt to stressors.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's very true. And in the article we're discussing, you talk about some research carried out at the University of Athens that is helping shed light on some of the underlying cellular mechanisms that are responsible for this adaptive capacity in the bird. Would you mind elaborating a little bit on that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. This research, had some really exciting findings. It suggests that the response of important cellular adaptive pathways in the bird and in the gut of the ovary of the bird can be modulated in favor of positive outcomes for productivity and by nutritional means. So in other words, we can feed birds to enhance their adaptive capacity, which is huge if you think about it. as it allows egg producers to have greater control on how birds respond to stressors. And one of the key cellular adaptive pathways they looked at was the NRF2-KIAP1 pathway. It is involved in the mobilization of cellular antioxidant defenses to alleviate oxidative stress in tissues. And the activation of this pathway upregulates antioxidant enzymes and also cytoprotective proteins. So oxidative stress is caused by excessive production of reactive oxygen species, and that's often in response to stressors, like I mentioned before. And if we can upregulate the antioxidant defense in the bird by modulating this NRF-KIAP1 pathway through nutritional means, we can then also mitigate the potential damage from oxidative stress in response to stressors. And this is really what the researchers were looking at and also evaluating certain products.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and it's very valuable. And following up on the oxidative stress, and what role does it play, for example, in ovarian aging, and how does it affect egg production over time when we're talking about layers?
Yeah, so oxidative stress is one of the main causes of ovarian aging, which is caused by excessive, like I mentioned earlier, it's caused by excessive production of reactive oxygen species. And this then results, if that's happening in the ovary, this results in oxidative damage to oocytes in the ovaries, which contributes to a decline in the ovarian function over time and also fertility. And the degree of oxidative stress in the ovaries of laying hens increases continuously over time during the aging process. So that's then when you then really see a notable decline sort of, by 80 weeks of age or something in egg production. So that's sort of the underlying things that are going on in the back office of the ovary, basically. So yeah, and oxidative stress in ovaries can be exacerbated by stressors like heat stress, for example, which again can then accelerate the ovarian aging. And altogether, this is actually one of the limiting factors to extend laying cycles. So if we cannot control this, then it's also difficult to have longer laying cycles in laying hens.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it's a key point to keep in mind and to try and work on. And you mentioned this before, and you talked a bit about the cellular mechanisms that were looked at and explored in this research. And how can we use this increased understanding of such mechanisms in laying hens to help us develop nutritional strategies that support them?
Yeah, so it is known and that from plants that they have evolved very effective compounds to protect themselves from oxidative stress on cellular levels. So a great understanding of cellular adaptive pathways in the bird can also then help us measure the impact of feeding those types of compounds, sort of natural compounds derived from plants, and evaluate the potential to support these pathways to enhance the adaptive capacity in the bird. And then that also means it can become much more, we can become much more precise in developing effective formulas. So for example, like the gut agility activators that were mentioned in the research. And the upshot from this is really being that it enables us to take greater control of the adaptive capacity in birds through nutrition.
And if we take and compare these nutritional strategies and, for example, genetic selection, how do these compare in terms of improving the resilience of the laying hens to stressors, as you previously mentioned, some of them?
Yeah, so one difference, of course, is that It takes much longer to implement genetic changes compared to implementing nutritional changes. However, I mean, leading genetic research groups, they have already been looking in this for quite a few years. So actually much longer, I would say, compared to nutritional researchers. So, and so geneticists, they have also, I would say, a much clearer definition of for resilience in farm animals, which is also determined by how they measure improvements to resilience. For example, they calculate indicators based on, so in improving laying hen resilience, they calculate that based on deviations in body weight or egg production from expected performance and over time. So it's not just at a certain point of time, but several different individual data points over time. So the focus is much more on longitudinal data when they are then measuring improvements for resilience. So I would say genetic selection is further ahead, really being able to quantify the progress in the resilience of laying hens at the performance level. But as we see from the research that we were discussing today from nutritional research groups, this has really increased the understanding of the factors and adaptive mechanisms on the cellular level that potentially underlying this resilience. So, and having a great understanding on how we can maybe modulate them. So, however, I would say the nutrition research is lacking the measurement of resilience indicators at the performance level, so that you can actually compare the two types of research, so geneticists and research nutrition, in terms of how they're making progress in resilience for laying hens. So combining the two would probably be the optimum, I think.
Yeah, that would probably be the most valuable, and you would get the most out of it, right? If they're able to do that.
Yeah.
That's
so we are basically talking all from the same page. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's very interesting. And to finally kind of start wrapping it up, how do you think egg producers benefit from these new insights and emerging technologies that support or aim to support the adaptive capacity in laying hens and trying to improve it?
Yeah, I mean, advances in understanding the cellular adaptive pathways in the laying hen, in combination with nutritional strategies to support long life ovarian function, can enhance the control egg producers have over sustaining longer laying cycles in their flocks. And that then means, being able to support longer laying cycles leads to economic advantages for the egg producer, but it also helps to reduce the environmental footprint of egg production. And increased adaptive capacity, one more advantage is, if it's leading to improved resilience in laying hens, it also means that the birds become easier to manage, which can be a significant save on labor time. And that's definitely something that the geneticists are also looking into. Really, the main reason is benefit from improving resilience is like making the birds easier to manage, so you can save on labor costs, or also in many countries we now have a shortage in labor. So how can you still have high welfare standards and everything by having less labor to use? So that's one way of bringing solutions basically to egg production.
That's great. So yeah, Gwendolyn, I would like to thank you again on behalf of all of our team. It's been quite a nice dive into adaptive capacity in laying hens, and also expanding a little bit more and seeing it from a broader perspective. So we would really like to thank you for your time and for your insights, and we hope to have you again soon discussing this and interesting topics and other topics as well. So thank you on behalf of all of NutriNews International and on behalf of our audience as well.
I also say thank you very much for having me today. I really enjoyed discussing the topic, and I hope it's also helping others out there.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, thank you everyone for joining, and it'll be until next time.